Well, as the war continues in Ukraine, the United States continues to find ways to send money to Ukraine and also weaponry. Now, this is not charitable, despite what the United States would have you think. In fact, just last week, the Senate unanimously passed the Ukraine Democracy Defense Lend Act of 2022. Catchy name there. It has not passed the House yet, but most likely will, since all aid to Ukraine seems to have bipartisan support. But what it will do will create a lend-lease program where we can send over weaponry, kind of like a rent-to-own, right?
Right.
You can drive this tank for a while. You can, with zero money down, but we will come up with the terms of repayment, and you can believe that those terms will be beneficial to us.
That's right. And what's amazing about this is think about how you literally put a country into massive debt for war. That's exactly what's happening here. Benjamin Norton tweeted this: debt trap alert. The U.S. Senate unanimously passed a lend-lease program that threatens to trap Ukraine in debt in return for U.S. aid to fight a proxy war in Russia. Britain did not pay off its 1945 lend-lease debt until 2006. And it sabotaged the pound sterling. Think about that for a minute. So you want to help Ukraine, okay? We all want to help and support, make sure that people aren't being slaughtered, right? The best thing forward is to not be continuing to send an unbelievable amount of weapons into this region, right? That's something I think we all support. Well, one thing you could do is to not also put a country massively into debt and drive their economy into the ground by forcing them to take out huge loans in perpetuity so that they can continue to fund this endless war. But it's amazing. On the one hand, they continue to take out these massive loans from these banks that are supported, by the United States. So they're making all kinds of money on these interest payments for war. And,
yes.
and the military-industrial complex is making billions of dollars off of taxpayer dollars for contracts to fund this war. I mean, do you guys not see what's happening here? It's disgusting, and this is really the story. I think you want to talk about Putin bad. Yes, absolutely, he's a bad guy. This is the real story here. Follow the money trail. Follow the money in this and see this all unfolding before your eyes.
I like this comment from Kevin Michael Reed. He says, interesting, rather than let Russia enslave Ukraine, the U.S. will financially enslave Ukraine. And that absolutely is what will happen, because there's no talk of canceling the debt payments.
No.
Especially if, these types of things can go on for decades. Right now, this is separate from the $1.7 billion in aid that we've already sent over there. Will we get an accounting for it? Who knows, right? Do we have enough? In fact, Wall Street is saying, well, we do have enough weapons to send over either on a loan or give them maybe the ones we don't want, right? But then we have to rebuild our own stocks. So this will not only benefit the United States government, which can now spread its hegemony through debt, but also weapons makers, which will have to replenish those stocks.
It's really, really disgusting. And I have to say, if you look at this, keeping these countries in debt over your wars in perpetuity, it leaves them literally like kissing the boots of the king on a
yeah.
Caitlin Johnstone says, plunge your nation into debt to the United States for the privilege of fighting a proxy war for the United States. Yes, exactly.
So,
she always nails it.
I don't understand what are you betting on, though? Like, what are you betting will be there to pay you back at this point? Because I don't know if the United States has an idea of what this government will be when this is like, is this even a good loan, right?
Right.
I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. Well, I can't put together, it's like a bunch of frayed pieces of rope that I can't seem to connect, other than the fact that, like, sure, this sort of makes sure another nation is in debt with the US dollar. So it continues this Cold War about which currency in the world is the default currency. And it helps to spread it further and further east. That part I get.
There's a great piece, and Benjamin Norton points this out, by Michael Hudson, who over at the Multipolarista, economist Michael Hudson lays out how the United States empire subordinated the British economy after World War II, trapping it in debt with the Lend-Lease program and the Anglo-American loan. And this forced the convertibility of the pound sterling into the dollar at an overvalued rate. Basically, hey, we're your friend, but not really. Like, we'll help you in this war, but not really. You're just going to be in debt to us up until 2006. Imagine that student loan balance that you can't pay off.
Well, it's interesting because you see the European Union sending money too, right? And you see NATO continuing to creep into Ukraine, even though they're saying they're only sort of supporting on the periphery. And NATO operates, on the US dollar as well. And so it helps to sort of spread this Western economy further and further east.
Well, and meanwhile, today, President Biden, shortly before our show, announcing another $800 million in military aid to Ukraine, more weapons, more bombs, the like, all coming into Ukraine. So this will continue to flow.
Isn't it funny how we just passed a bill to fund the government because we had taken on more debt than was legally allowed? But when it's something the government wants, like war, we found some money in our back pocket, in a shoe, in a coat you hadn't worn since last year, right? That seems to be the way. Well, I see you in the chat room, all of you who are pointing out that the United States cannot take care of its own people, a la prescription drugs, education, Medicare, healthcare, nothing, right? But war, we got it. We got you covered.
Well, Claire Daly, we featured her here on the show before. She's been an outspoken opponent of war and additional money to war, and she's laughed at. In Ireland for her stance on this. She's a member of the European Parliament. She's an independent. She calls herself a socialist, and she's absolutely stands against war. Well, she spoke out just yesterday on funneling more money and more weapons into this region. So here she is, Claire Daly, speaking about this. I have to route this through a different way than I would like to, so just give me 1 second here. Here is Claire Daly.
I'm asking you to tell me any circumstance in which NATO has played a productive role or delivered peace anywhere. History has taught us that sanctions do not end military conflicts. They do not bring peace. They make the people suffer, not the oligarchs, the people of Russia, the people of Europe. And they're not going to help save lives, because the more arms you pump into Ukraine, the more the war will be prolonged, the more Ukrainians will die. And it might sound radical, colleagues, but the answer to war is not more war, it's peace. And peace isn't delivered by the barrel of a gun, it's delivered by diplomacy, by dialogue. You can wish away your continent's history, but we share a continent with Russia. We will sit down with Russia. There will be a negotiated peace, and this organisation should be promoting it earlier rather than delaying it and making sure that more Ukrainians die. Your feigning of sympathy rings hollow. It makes me sick, to be honest with you.
He's going home. He's like,
he gets up. Have you seen the longer clip? He literally gets up and leaves.
Yeah, he's like, I can't handle it. Enough of this. We can't. The only way you achieve peace is with weapons. Oh, really? Is that really the only way you achieve peace is with weapons? I mean, this is amazing. So continue to funnel President Biden more, billions of dollars of weapons into Ukraine. Keep doing as much as you can to prolong this proxy war.